dispatchers one-on-one every day. Granted, we don't understand their jobs as well as we'd like to sometimes. They don't understand ours, and often we get into a little breakdown in communication, honestly, in conveying that. But when it all comes about, we're able to understand their job and how important theirs is. Without theirs, we don't exist, and vice versa. You know, without them, again, there's another backbone. We can't take a vertebrae out of the backbone. And they deserve everything that they get. I'll tell you what, if you're sitting in a dispatch center, they all wear headsets. We can't hear necessarily the phone call that's coming in, but there are times the person, the 911 caller, or just the irate citizen is yelling strong enough and loud enough that we're back 10, 15 feet and we can still hear them. But yet, they don't take that headset off, and they still maintain their composure, and they still try to maintain the control of the caller to get the information accurately and consistently that they need as a call taker. That's exceptional, and unless you're put under that exact stress, you won't understand it. I don't understand it. You know, I can tell you what it was like when we used to be able to run our own systems when an officer could actually come in and dispatch out. We can't do that anymore. The system is far too complex, requires far too much training for us to just come in and relieve a dispatcher for a short period of time. They deserve every ounce of pay that they get, and they deserve more.
I feel pretty strongly about this issue. I'm proud to say that I did supervise the 911 center when it was under the sheriff's office for several years, and there's several people in here that worked for me in those days, and thanks for not throwing anything. But this is pretty near and dear to my heart, and I felt fairly strongly that any division that I supervised or any people that I oversaw, I felt fairly strongly that I should have a working knowledge of their job. So I had a pretty good working knowledge of dispatch and would actually try to go in on occasion, plug in with a headset and type in the CAD system, and I see some smiles from the dispatchers here in the room because it was pretty scary. And I found that, I think I'm not necessarily a dumb guy, but I don't have the ability to work that hard and multitask that well. I cannot do 6 things at once. Perhaps that's gender-based. I don't know. As men, we tend to not be as multitasked. But that being said, I think that the savings in consolidation come from equipment savings, because you have centralized equipment. You don't have different dispatch centers that all have duplicate equipment. I think they come from management combination savings, so you don't have multiple managers for multiple agencies. And I think they come in part from reduction of force. You don't need as many people on duty at any given time countywide to handle it. So those to me are the savings that come forth when we talk about consolidation. Reducing wages of your employees is never a good idea, and I don't think that's the proper way to save money in consolidation. So I certainly would go to bat to not have anyone's wages reduced. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Over the past 4 years, the number of officers on patrol has increased to every department in the Flathead Valley: Whitefish, Columbia Falls, MHP, KPD, and the SO's office. The detention facility has had an overall increase of inmates and bookings by over 50% over the past 10 years. Yet no increased staffing to this area has been made. Many times the entire facility is run by a 4-man shift. Many concerns have been voiced about staff safety and the increased workload they have had to absorb. If elected sheriff, what recommendations or ideas would you have regarding this ongoing problem?
Ladies and gentlemen, the jail issue, and specifically, let me address, I'll come back to that specific question because I think it's an important one, but the jail issue itself, the overcrowding of the jail, many of you in this room have heard about that for a lot of years. Have you heard anything about it for the last several years? I haven't, and I don't think it's been addressed. It's yet to be addressed. Populations currently are down a little bit in detention as I talk to the staff in the detention center, but that's cyclic. And the bottom line is whatever size facility we build, we are going to fill. That's simply the way it is. currently, there are a lot of issues I think we need to look at in detention. I would not be in favor of going to the voters, all of you here, and proposing that we build a new jail. These aren't the correct economic times for that, and I don't think we should, but I think we need to look at some various advances in technology, some programs that we can use to try and move some of the nonviolent offenders out. They started a work release program a few years ago. Work release was tried years and years ago. It doesn't work. It tries to put the cost of coming to jail for the night on the offenders, and people just don't do it. So they aren't filling the rooms held for work release, at least very often. But there are other innovative ways in working with the judiciary. The staffing in the jail, and I'll try and be very brief, I know I'm using up my time. The staffing issue in the jail, certainly. The sheriff does have to live within this budget. And as a matter of fact, you have to. If you don't, you're personally liable. So I don't think Lance, I, or even Sheriff Meehan would want to go over their budget. I don't have an extra $500,000 in my checking account to cover that. So I think that if we look at better ways to focus our attention on moving inmates out, we need to readdress the staffing issues in the jail, and I would like very much to work with detention to make sure that they feel they're safe, they have the staff to keep the people safe, and if they don't, then I think we need to address that in the only manner we can, and that's moving funds around, living within our current budget.
Excuse me 1 second. Both of you have said you have an open door policy. So does in detention. So whoever does get elected, would love to see you.
I bet, and you will.
Thank you for that question. So the non-law enforcement folks can understand a little bit here. Max capacity is 107. We try and keep it maximum about 92.
It was built for 62.
Built for 62, that's correct, but a maximum 107, which it's actually been over that in the past, which when it does, the tensions in there are so thick it takes a chainsaw to cut them. It's that bad. I understand their staffing levels because there's often they are down to 4 people, and then if somebody gets sick and they have to go up to the hospital, we're often the ones that are transporting them up there or back to, because they don't have anyone else to help provide that. They are having to call people in to help cover another floor. It's an absolute nightmare. Now, to get into some of the reasons their staffing are having the problems is with the increased population, obviously, as increased crime, increased problems. With that, we have the increased problems. We are bringing more people to jail. Well, we worked with the judiciary and the county attorney's office to try and figure out a way that we could reduce those numbers. When they do that, it was a great idea. The problem is it's called a processing. In other words, they, as the jailers, process these people through at a quicker rate. More people come into the jail, they process them through and try and get them back out, so there's still room in the jail for when those people need to come in. There are programs in place, the work release program that's been brought up. That program was introduced roughly 3.5, 4 years ago, and it is funded by the offender. The problem is if I'm not mistaken, I think there was 3 offenders that could afford it, and otherwise it's been sitting empty ever since. It doesn't work, because the majority of the time those people are offending for a reason, because they're having hard economic times and they're going out and offending to try and make things better, at least for themselves in their own eyes. There's other programs we can look at. Ankle bracelets are a prime example. Home arrest. There are other things that we can look at. There are other avenues that we need to look at and explore. And a lot of other agencies have already done this, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to consort with some other agencies, find out what's working for them, and again, the key word is working for them, and see if we can apply it here to our local area and economy. So, and then going back to the original, make this really fast. I remember when the sheriff, because I was one of the ones standing up there, that went into the county commissioners and we said, commissioners, we need a little bit more money because we need some more staffing out on the street. We're shorthanded. I don't see any reason, Sheriff, that we can't do that for you in the jail as well, to get some more people over there.
What are your thoughts on having a 4-day work week for the office of sheriff? And then also in conjunction to that, you might address a flexible schedule, the ability to work short hours one day and longer hours another day, and the ability to document the sheriff's hours and his administrative staff's hours for accountability, that the public is getting a day's work for a day's pay.
Well, I would love to have a 4-day